And moving away from home, as it were, can you tell us about some of the more significant collaborations or research projects that you've got going with countries in the continent?
Well, our major collaboration is with an American university.
Yes.
Rutgers University in Newark. And what is fascinating about this relationship is we also need to understand that social inequity is not an African problem. So Newark is a neighborhood with similarities to Mamelodi. It's not a Mamelodi, but it's a neighborhood, a poor neighborhood. So the future, I think, is through co-creation of knowledge, is through integrated development of materials and models and interventions. So we partnered initially with Rutgers University in Newark, and recently we have partnered with Namibia. And what we're doing mostly has been in the education space, and we're developing a model for pre-university intervention. And what that includes is, besides the cognitive side of a human being, which you often focus on, we need to develop the non-cognitive side. Namibia, there's an NGO called PAY, Physically Active Youth. So what they do is they complement the academic, enrichment with outside activities like swimming and so on. And there's a lot of research which shows that being physically active actually has a bearing on academic, involvement.
And this reminds me of a conversation I had with Sibongile Khumalo, the singer. And we were talking about education, but also the role of the arts in education.
Exactly.
And, we have this strong emphasis on, our very analytical based subjects. And she really went and explained, from an arts point of view, if you are learning to listen to people, you've got to be in time with each other. Studying music, how you have a different cognitive ability of where you're looking for things in a different way. And this totally speaks to what you're saying, that we are ideally wanting to develop whole individuals that are not just thinkers, but are social beings that understand the rest of their circumstances in society.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, if I can just give you an example, we recently introduced a cycling club for girls in our after-school program, our maths and science program. And on first sight, people will say, okay, what are they doing cycling? But you can teach them green energy there.
Altitude, speed.
You can teach them a number of concepts, but they don't have to learn them in a formal classroom.
It's applied.
It's applied, exactly. So, I totally agree with Sibongile. We can't compartmentalize human learning. Human beings are whole. And unfortunately, we are socialized into our disciplines, and the world doesn't operate in those boxes.
Of course, and we're multidimensional.
Exactly, absolutely, yeah.
So Namibia is one link, and another thing that I read recently is that you have recently been appointed to be the Vice President of the Pan-African University. Can you tell us a bit more about that role, what it entails?
Yes, maybe I should just explain what the Pan-African University is. It's a human capital development initiative. It's actually a continental flagship program which was launched in 2011 by the African Union Council. And the idea is to develop capacity, research capacity at the postgraduate level, So it consists of 5 nodes, which have been designated as, research nodes, and they have expertise in those nodes. And there are 5 of them. There's one on governance and social sciences and humanities, and it's in Central Africa. Basic sciences in East Africa, life sciences in West Africa, water and energy in the north, and space sciences still to be created in South Africa, hopefully in 2020. So the idea is to develop a critical mass of high quality researchers that can address continental problems. But also, more importantly, is also to foster social integration. One unique thing about the PAU is the idea of language. Those from Anglophone countries learn French, the Francophone learn English. So when somebody qualifies with a PhD and they never knew French, they are conversant with French. So I think that's good for the African continent. Yeah.
Completely, and communication is key to everything.
Exactly.
And I always think that when you can speak to someone in their language, that's when things resonate. It's when the lights go off. Staying with the theme of Africanness, how do you think the responsibilities of universities are towards shaping the thinking of students as South Africa, and also in terms of the continent's future socio-political and economic players?
I think our biggest challenge is to develop socially engaged graduates. When I look at the inequality, and if I use my own University of Pretoria, just moving from Hatfield to Mamelodi is a totally different world. We cannot sustain this. And, inequality has become a buzzword, and I don't think many of us actually internalize it. We can intellectualize it, and exactly what we do is something else. But I think developing that civic responsibility and graduates that are intolerant to the inequality that we see every day. And the students that study at the Mamelodi campus actually say, we actually are struck by inequality every day. And they come out of there after 12, they spend a year there. After a year, they are changed people, most of them, both black and white students. So I really think that our biggest challenge is develop socially engaged graduates.
And do you have a particular reference, because we're a gender-based show, from a woman's point of view on, one of the things that you mentioned was introducing the cycling classes or the after-school activities with young girls. But from an academic point of view, I've noticed repeatedly in the statistics from a South African perspective that we actually have more female graduates than men.
Isn't that intriguing? Yet it's skewed, in terms of qualifications. Besides, having more female graduates, and by the way, we also, in general, are more than them. In South Africa, there are more males than females. So, on face value, we actually produce more graduates, but they are not in the disciplines, in maths and science, for example. So, in terms of, developing, what was your question again?
Well, looking at it from a woman's point of view, because you spoke general on one of the key issues of being to develop socially engaged students and how they can be active role players in society from that.
Yes.
And I wondered, in your view, if you've also got a perspective from women in particular.
Yes, if let me take our students in that commence their studies in Mamelodi. Most of our alumni actually come back and give back to the community, and we've started a Women in Science, program with our alumni. That's what they come and do experiments over the weekend, demystify science and all that, and they mentor some of the young girls. And I think that's what we as women really are obliged to do, giving back to those that are not in a fortunate position.